Well, in the reading corner today, I'm thrilled to be welcoming teenage author Libby Scott, who is the author of, or co-author, as we'll find out in a moment, of 4 books. Can You See Me, the debut book, which was published in 2019, and followed by Do You Know Me, Ways to Be Me, and now All the Pieces of Me. She's joined by Rebecca Westcott, who is an author in her own right and who you'll know from wonderful books such as Dandelion Clocks. Today, we're going to explore a little bit about how these 2 authors came to be working together. We're also going to talk a little bit about the latest book, All the Pieces of Me. And we're definitely going to be talking about some of the themes and issues that it raises, which will be of particular interest to our audience. I wonder whether I have put this down as a question to Libby, but Rebecca, you may have some thoughts to add to it as well. I was interested to know how the first book came about, Can You See Me? How did that come to be published by both of you?
So it started off from the very start was I was in my own house and I had a thought that I was really bored and I'd never done any voluntary writing before. So I think I was 10 at the time, 10 or 11. And I decided I was going to write a little short story. I'd just been diagnosed with autism and I wanted to write a fictional thing, but slightly non-fiction because it was about my life. It's called The Life of a Perfectionist. And it was sort of just expressing my feelings through fiction, which I'd never done before. And my mum got home, I showed it to her, thinking that it was not that great, and she thought it was amazing. So she decided to post it on her Twitter for all her teachers to sort of see, and and it went viral pretty much. It got millions of views and stuff. And then we got Scholastic come and give me a book deal, and they paired me up with Rebecca, which has been amazing, a great pairing, and that's how the first one came about.
So exciting. I understand that people like Neil Gaiman were actually commenting on your Twitter feed, and it must have been an amazing moment.
It's completely surreal. I'd never, I'd only seen things like this on the internet, a 10-year-old, not been through anything like this, but it was amazing to go through all these amazing comments that people were relating to me, and that people were understanding my point of view, and that people saying I'm going through the same thing. It was really, really nice to see.
That's what made it so exciting, wasn't it? Because what you were getting the feedback, and I didn't know this at the time when it was happening, but then quite quickly came on board afterwards and went and looked at all the comments that Libby had. It was the reason it resonated with people was because Libby had written something that really made people stop and say, either I recognize myself in what you're saying, or I recognize my child. And I think the reason Scholastic got so excited was because often we hear about particularly how it might be to be a child, and maybe we've learnt about autism previously from the point of view of neurotypical adults often, when suddenly here was a neurodivergent child telling us exactly what it was like to be her, and that was really exciting. And I think that was one of the reasons that people were so interested in what Libby had written.
Authenticity and it's from the heart, those 2 things, I think. And could I just ask you one other question, Libby? Were you doing quite a lot of writing for yourself, like diaries, that kind of thing?
Well, I did have a diary, and that was where I jot down a lot of my friendship problems, things like that. But I found myself writing it as if other people were going to see it. So I'd never really written anything that was close to my heart like that.
I love that idea, and I'm really fascinated by that idea of a diary, which is really a private thing, and yet you still thought that other people were sort of over your shoulder reading it, kind of thing. Yeah. Rebecca, tell us how you got involved.
Scholastic got in touch with me because they knew about my previous books, and so they put Libby in touch, and we had to go and meet. We went for lunch, didn't we, Libby? We knew that we were going to get on well because Libby wanted pudding for her main lunch course. So it was Yeah. Yeah. And we got on brilliantly, and we started chatting immediately about sort of ideas that we had. And by the time I went back home to Dorset on the train, already we had hashed out the start of this character and what we wanted this book to be about. And I think we both felt quite strongly that we didn't want it to be a book about autism. We wanted it to be a book about a girl going through all the things that kids go through. And she is autistic. It's a book about her and the things that make her different, the things that make her the same. We had lots of sort of thoughts about what her challenges might be. And lots of those challenges were challenges that lots of kids might face. And some of those challenges were unique to her. So it was an incredibly exciting time. And we then started writing, that I would do a bit of writing and send it to Libby. She would look at it and give her thoughts on it. It then, again, adds that authenticity to the whole book, that she'll say, hang on a minute, that the thing that you've had here is not how it would be for me or for our character Tally. But Libby ultimately wrote the diary entries from Tally's perspective, which of course is not something I could do, because for an authentic Own Voices book, that needed to come from Libby. And I think that's what makes it so special. We've also been able to have the services of a sensitivity reader for each of our books, which has been invaluable, because I felt, I'm a special needs teacher, and I felt that I felt quite confident that we would have not put anything in our books that would cause offence or upset to anybody. And our sensitivity reader brilliantly was able to show us examples of things that really I hadn't picked up on, that have certainly made the book much better by being challenged on things. For example, words being weaponized and not being challenged. So not that everything has to end in a happy ending, just that the message we give out to our readers is this an acceptable way for perhaps friends to treat you, or for teachers to behave, that sometimes things aren't ideal, but we need to challenge that. And it's been really useful for us. It's been a very new experience for me working with a sensitivity reader, but very, very useful.
Wow, we all need a sensitivity reader on our shoulder, I think.
I think so.
So this is a question really for you, Rebecca. Several novels over the years have been published in the past by young, gifted teenagers. And while I commend them on that endeavour, as a reviewer, I've often felt that they could have done with some form of mentorship. And I wondered whether the approach that you've adopted here, whether you could see that co-authoring working with other young teenagers, not for you necessarily, but as an idea.
I actually think about that quite a lot, because I think, I certainly had no experience of co-authoring, and being a teacher, it was in the most incredible experience helping Libby to tell her story. And actually, with my first few books, I didn't think anything would beat the thrill of telling the story that's inside your own head. But actually, there is something that's almost better, which is, having a young person with an incredible voice and incredible stories to tell, and helping them elevate that and really share that story has been a really incredible experience. And I think it's something that could definitely be a brilliant model to help teenagers and young people.
Libby, let's talk about your latest book, All the Pieces of Me. Can you tell us about it in your own words? What's happening to Tally in this book?
So if I could sort of describe it in like a analogy, like a quote, it would probably be, when she's at home, she's in like her own pack of lions, for example. They're going to fight within themselves, but she knows she belongs there. But once she goes to school, it's like she's with the whole zoo, and she doesn't know what to do. There's all sorts. There's the predators, there's the prey, and she just feels like she's in this crazy mix of people of all different types, and it's just a very scary and overcrowded sort of atmosphere for her. And
so it's her coping with all of that. And what kind of strategies does she develop to cope with this whole wild pack of creatures out there?
So there was one thing that we did add in this book that I really, really thought was a great idea, because I do it myself. This is something that really related to me, is that she started songwriting, which is something that I always do. to help with expressing my emotions. And Tally decided to write some songs about her feelings that, yeah, I thought they were like, it would be a really good idea, because I think it's something that everyone should do. It's such a great, even if you don't think you're very, you know, gifted like musically, it's just a great way like to express how you're feeling in like a period of time.
I mean, music is amazing for that, song and music. Do you write the music as well as the lyrics, or just the lyrics?
No, I write the music as well. I actually have a piano that I sort of put my songs onto. And I've had a couple songs like recorded and things in the past. So that's something that I really am like passionate about. Music is one of my like favorite things to like do and listen to.
Wow. So I want to ask you whether in the future you would see yourself as a writer of novels or a writer of songs, or maybe both.
Well, my dream has always been to be like a singer, but I've not really decided yet, because I'd love to sort of carry on down the writing kind of path, but also maybe I could switch it up one day and go to music, because that's something I've been to. I went a few days to like a music college about producing and DJing and all sorts. I really enjoyed it. So that's definitely something that I've always been passionate about, because my dad's actually like a guitarist. So it sort of runs in our family to be musical. So, yeah.
Can I ask you something? Because Tally mentions this in her diary in All the Pieces of Me. She mentions her diagnosis. And you've already said that you had a diagnosis at the age of 10.
Yeah.
How important was that to you? Was it a good thing to have a diagnosis?
100%. I would like advise to any parents out there to, if you see any traits of autism in your child, I would really, really recommend getting them diagnosed, because it's just such a great way to help your child understand themselves. And you know, you can't come to terms as easily with, you know, your behaviors if you don't have that label to be able to research and explain to people, give reasoning for your behaviors and anything like that. It's just such a great thing to do. And I suppose some parents might be wary, because they might be worried that their child's going to be like, you know, bullied, self-conscious, but it's always better to be labelled by sort of, say, a teacher as an autistic child rather than like just a naughty child or something. So I'm so glad that I did it. It really, really helped me. It cleared up my confusion, which was the best thing, because I'd never heard of autism. I'd probably would have thought it was like some sort of disease or a full-on, you know, disability, but now I've realised that it's not, and I wouldn't change my autism even if I could.
It's part of, maybe this sounds corny, I don't know, but it is part of a gift to be able to see the world in different ways. Must be a gift of humanity, not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I think like the more the world learns, the better, because like I heard this somewhere and it's so true that the 99% of the bad traits of autism are other people not understanding it. For example, feeling socially awkward is another thing. But if you think about it, that's really can come down to other people not understanding you and tuning into you and stuff.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask was, if we get to that point where people are accepting of neurodivergence, and, you know, there's a lot of different kinds of neurodivergence, if we get to that point, we don't need a diagnosis, do we?
No, exactly. I think, yeah, it'd be so great for people to just research into it a lot more, because it's not really a topic that like many people know a lot about. And I really like, a lot of people know about sort of like anxiety and depression, but I think people see autism as something completely different to that, and something that's like almost a very touchy subject and stuff. But I think the more you will research into it for neurotypicals, I think the better life will get for us.
I haven't forgotten you, Rebecca, but I just want to ask Libby one more question because I know it's really important to you, and using the right language is important. I understand from the publisher, but you can tell me if it's not correct, that you prefer to say that you are autistic rather than to say you have autism. Can you explain that to us?
So I think saying that I'm a person with autism is almost like having to remind me that I'm still a person. I know I'm a person, so it's sort of like, just call me like an autistic person. So it's not a massive issue to me. I'm not the kind of person to get offended over it, but if I could have a preference.
It's always important, I think, for us to talk about language, especially with the people are listening in to what we do. So school can be challenging for any teenagers, but it's probably amplified that challenge for autistic teenagers. Tell us about some of the challenges that Tally faces, some of the specific challenges that she faces at school.
So I think her number one, sort of her main few challenges are things that come down to socializing. So she obviously has some baddies in her class and some mean bullies and stuff. And I think she finds it hard to sort of feel like all eyes are on her. And she doesn't like being the centre of attention. She finds it very hard to be shouted at or talked down to and things like that, which are also things that I related to when I was, earlier in school. And yeah, I think she finds it hard to be in crowds as well. So with a lot of people in a classroom, it's quite hard for her, all the noise and the atmosphere.
Rebecca, you've already told us that you're a SEN teacher as well as being an author. From your point of view, what can teachers do to make life easier for their autistic students?
I think the most important thing is something that I've learnt from Libby, which is that if you know one autistic student, guess what? You know one autistic student. You do not know all autistic students. So the number one rule for any teacher is to learn your pupils and to know who it is that is in front of you, understand the things that they find tricky, understand the things that they love to do, understand the things that they are brilliant at doing, understand the things that they hate to do, know what their triggers are, know what that looks like. Sometimes you might be having to then teach them what their triggers are because they might not know what their triggers are, and that might be taking a really long time. It's going to be a slow process for some children and young people. For others, they're entirely owning the whole process, and they are the experts. So I would say number one is knowing exactly everything you can about your pupils, and the best way to do that, first and foremost, is by talking to them. Secondly is by talking to families, and then after that, looking at the way you behave. I've learned so much from writing these books with Libby, and really changed over the last few years my own practice in terms of things that I thought were a fair expectation of kids, that then talking with Libby realized the pressure that I was putting on inadvertently without realizing it, the fact that I might have been doing something that made some members of my class feel awkward or uncomfortable or anxious. Well, they're not going to learn if they're feeling any of those things. So being prepared to be adaptive, flexible, reflective all the time, think, did I get that right? And when something goes wrong, not just looking at that restoratively with the young person, but also asking yourself, what could I do differently next time?
Yeah, of course, that works for all children, all students. It's about connecting on a personal level, isn't it? And the best teachers do connect it in those ways. I'd like to ask Libby the same question, really. Can you tell us some of the positive things that teachers in school have done that have supported you?
The main thing that really does help me is the sort of energy I get off a teacher. And it might not even be purposeful, but if a teacher has always got like a smile and is always just kind and doesn't shout, that's like one of the best things you can really do for me, is just to give off sort of a warm energy. That's my favourite like type of teacher. But I'm trying to think of like specific things, but I think it's little things that help me the most. So I'm at a great school right now that is really, really flexible with sort of what I do and stuff. It isn't a special school, but they're just really, really flexible and nice. And I have a teacher, and she doesn't act like a teacher. She's almost like a family member kind of vibe. Like, she's really warm and nice. And if I'm finding something hard, like I don't want to do this lesson, or I don't want to go out to lunch today or something, she'll come up with a completely new thing that I can do. I even am allowed to bring Louie, my dog, into school. So it's like, it was really great going from a mainstream school back in London to this school that's so flexible and amazing.
You mentioned your lovely dog, Louie, and I think you like horses too. So there's a sort of an animal connection there. Tell us something about animals and why they're important to you.
I think I actually remember this line being in Can You See Me, my first book, and it's that animals are the best because they don't judge you. You can have a best friend that's a person, but they can always judge you and argue with you and stuff, but you can never have a argument with a dog, and you can never be judged or feel, I just think dogs are the best, and animals, because you can just connect with them without words, which is a really special thing, I think.
I have just one more question for you, and it comes towards the end of All the Pieces of Me, and the quote is that everybody deserves to be heard. Mm-hmm. Has writing about Tally helped you to find your voice and to be heard?
So much. It's really, really been such an amazing experience. Like, it's a really once in a lifetime thing. And I feel sorry for all the autistic people that don't have a chance to have the amazing, experience that I had. And I think I'd just advise them to speak up to anyone, like a family member, with any struggles you have, even if you've never been diagnosed or anything, but you think you could be autistic. I think talking to someone like a mum or teacher would just be great. And I think everyone deserves to have a voice and be heard.
Mm-hmm. I said that was the last question, but I have got one more, and that is that there are a number of really good writers now, neurodivergent writers. I wondered if you'd had the chance to meet or talk to any of them, like Elle McNichol, for instance. Have you been able to make connections with other writers?
Not in person, but I think I've probably conversed with a few over like social media and Twitter. I have a lot of not as much anymore. I haven't been on Twitter for a while, but like a year or two back, I would have loads of conversations with also like teachers. Teachers would ask me to send like a birthday message to one of their students that read my book and stuff. So I'm normally quite social on Twitter, but I don't think I can't remember an interaction I've had with another autistic author, but maybe I'm wrong.
I'm sure you will in the future. Can I just thank you both so much for joining me? It's been absolutely fascinating. And thank you so much for joining us in the Reading Corner.
Thanks for having us on.
In the Reading Corner is presented by Nikki Gamble and produced by Alison Hughes. This episode is generously sponsored by Scholastic Children's Books. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. If you would like to find out about other events and courses, visit justimagine.co.uk. Join us again in the Reading Corner on your favourite podcast platform.